Thank you very much, Doug. Before I introduce our next speaker, I have to give you a bit of a warning about economists. They have a bad rep in many quarters. Too often, they are arrogant and try to show how superior they are intellectually. They write as if English was their second language. They don't speak very well in public. Occasionally, there are some exceptions. And one of the foremost exceptions to all of those categories is our next speaker, Robert Solow, who served on the MIT faculty for several decades, culminating with the ultimate academic honor that that university can award to its faculty, making him an institute professor, which permitted him to teach and carry out the activities that he wished, and he did that with distinction for many, many years. I believe it may be the case that you were succeeded in that position by one of our previous honorees, namely Peter Diamond. In any event, I would like you all to welcome Robert Solow, who is also here to speak.
I ought to begin by telling you something about myself that up until now only my wife has known. I actually dread public speaking. Every time I have to get up, even in front of a really friendly gathering like this, my little tummy goes up and down. Fortunately, it usually ends up down rather than up. And every time I get off a plane, when I'm going to give a talk of some kind, my first thought is, what am I doing here? Well, I got off a plane a few hours ago in Washington, and naturally I asked myself, what am I doing here? So I'm going to tell you. I figured out what I'm doing here. The first thing I'm doing here is that, first reason I'm here is that Hank Aaron asked me. And I have always found it to be a good rule of thumb to do whatever Hank Aaron asks me to do. Much more important, the second reason is that I have enormous admiration and affection for Bob Reischauer, whom I think is one of nature's noblemen, and for reasons which I will tell you in just a second. But there's a third and broader reason why I figure I'm here. Like most of the people in this room, I hope, I believe that the principle of social insurance, the willingness collectively to share the risks, especially of economic life, that impact on individuals largely not through any fault of their own. I think that that principle is fundamentally what distinguishes a functioning society from the jungle. And I'm appalled at the large segment of American political life that either doesn't understand this or prefers the jungle. And it's on that account that I think that Bob Reischauer is so important to the society, because there is someone who can, as I couldn't, for instance, explain and defend the principles of social insurance calmly in an environment in which stridency is almost the native dialect, not only calmly, but logically and lucidly and convincingly and knowledgeably again in an atmosphere in which ignorance is no longer felt to be an obstacle to the public expression of very strong opinions about important subjects. So we're just extraordinarily lucky. I presume that's what's in the minds of the National Academy of social insurance, to have someone who faces the facts, convenient and inconvenient facts, both, and talks about what he knows. And it's for reasons like that I value Bob even more than as the long-term president of the Urban Institute, of another very valuable organization. You just have to admire someone who is the voice of reason in an environment of high-flown nonsense. Of course, there I'm talking about Harvard University. Now, Hank said to me that it would be desirable to have something negative to say about Reischauer, just to keep all the praise from going to his head. I found that very hard to do, but it led me to a story that I will tell you about my late beloved colleague Harold Freeman. You will not know Harold Freeman unless, like Bob Lerman, say you or Gary Burtles, you were a student in the economics department at MIT. Harold Freeman was a statistician, and he had two peculiarities. He didn't like to tell white lies, and he didn't like to say anything bad about anyone. Well, one day, Paul Samuelson baited Harold Freeman and said to him, "Harold, tell us something about Alan Wallace. You probably don't know who Alan Wallace was." Alan Wallace was an economist, statistician, a White House advisor to President Nixon, and notoriously not a nice man. And you could see the struggle in Harold Freeman's face. He didn't want to tell a lie. He didn't want to say anything terrible about anyone. And finally he said, "Well, Alan Wallace is the tallest statistician I know." And so I can say, without fear of contradiction, that Bob Reischauer is the tallest former director of the Congressional Budget Office that I know. And I remind you that in a class that includes Alice Rivlin, that is faint praise. So let me just finish by conferring on Bob what I think of as the supreme compliment. It's something that I think, I may be repeating something that I once said or wrote by another object of my affection and admiration, namely Art Oken. In all the years, in all the many years that I have observed Bob at the CBO as the director, and with the comings and goings that Hank mentioned, and even the more years that I've worked with him as he led and built the Urban Institute, I have never heard him say anything stupid. Think about it. There are not many people I can say that about, and that includes me. Thank you.